So if you haven't heard of the brand Goingmake, you're definitely going to want to check them out after this video. This brand continues to amaze me with their innovative products that always have new features. Not to mention all the products that I've looked at are high quality and reasonably priced. So let's dive into Goingmake's latest tool additions and see if any of them work for you. So I couldn't be more excited about today's video, as I'm always super impressed with all of the innovations that this tool brand brings with each new product release. And for this video, they've just released 2 brand new products as well as some updates on some of my favorites. So let's not waste any time at all and dive into some of their latest new products. This is the Goingmake Doweling Jig, perfect for joinery. Speaking of joining things, after my ex left me, I joined a Ukrainian dating site. Yeah, it worked out pretty well. Now I got a chick in Kiev. So I've already done a little bit of research on this tool and I've been pretty impressed at what I've seen. If we open the box of this thing, you can see that everything's very well packaged and every piece of this item is protected by a foam pad. But if we take this thing entirely out of the box, you can see there's quite a few pieces, and that's due to the flexibility of this tool. First off, you're going to notice that there's 3 different sized drill bits that come with this doweling jig, including 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. And you'll also get those same 3 sizes not only for a stop collar, but also a drill guide and a positioning pin. And other accessories include an extension positioning rod as well as some hardware. And finally, we get to the doweling jig itself, which looks nothing like any other doweling jig I've ever seen. Let's take a look at how this jig works in a couple of different scenarios. To do this, we're obviously going to need some dowels. In my case, I'm going to go with 1/4 inch dowels. The first thing that we're going to do is to grab 3 of the 1/4 inch drill guides and screw them into the top of the jig. Now that I have those drill guides in, I now want to take the positioning extension rod and screw it into the side of the jig. Now let's take a look at the scale that runs down the bottom of the jig, as this is what we'll use to set up our jig for our material. To show you how this jig works, we're going to be using 3/4 inch plywood, as well as those 1/4 inch dowels. To set up this jig, you'll see there's 2 large screw knobs on the very top. Simply loosen these so that you can adjust the jig. Since we're using 3/4 inch plywood, I want my dowels to hit right in the center of that plywood, which is right at 3/8 inch. So to set the jig, we're going to slide the scale to exactly 3/8 inch by aligning the arrow to 3/8 inch. Once that alignment has been made, we can find the 3/8 inch hole on the center scale on the tool. Then we can slide the center pin into that 3/8 inch hole and screw it into place with the knob on the top. Then it's just a matter of making sure that your 2 side scales are also at 3/8 inch, and then you can lock it into place with the 2 other knobs on the top. Now that we have the jig set up for 3/4 inch plywood, we can slide it right on top of our plywood. Now if you want to ensure consistency with your dowel holes, you're going to want to use that extension wing. Simply grab your 1/4 inch pin and slide it into the end of that extension wing. It's this extension wing and the pin that's going to reference the very edge of your plywood, giving you a consistent starting point. Now we're almost ready to start drilling some holes, but we first need to set the collar on our 1/4 inch drill bit. With our jig removed, we'll take our bit and slide it into the drill guide, and then take our dowel and slide the bit until it's about halfway through that dowel. Then we can lock the collar down on the other side of the jig with our hex key, and we're just about ready to drill some holes. All we need to do is to take our jig, place it back on top of that plywood, and clamp it into place with a knob that's on the opposite side of the scale. And with everything locked into place, we can drill out our first 3 holes, making sure that that collar bottoms out. Once we have our first 3 holes drilled out, we can continue down the line of this plywood. Let's first remove the jig. With our jig removed, we'll slide it down our plywood and take our pin and slide it into the last hole we drilled out. Then we can once again tighten that clamping jaw and drill out 3 more holes. Then we can repeat this process going down the entire line until we get as far as we want. And once we remove that jig, you can see how beautiful and consistent all those dowel holes are. But let's attach this piece of plywood that we just drilled out to another piece of plywood right on the very edge. To do this, we want to remove the clamping jaw. By simply unscrewing the 2 knobs on the side, we can easily remove that jaw. With our jaw removed, we can now slide the fence of the jig right up against the edge of our plywood, using the pin as a reference point on the very end of the plywood. Then we can unscrew the gray knob on the right-hand side of the jig and remove it to give us a clamping surface so that we can attach the jig to our plywood. And with everything in position, you're ready to drill out your first 3 holes. Then once again, you can slide the jig down, place the pin in, and clamp it into place and drill out your next next 3 holes until you're down the entire length of that plywood. Then once all those holes are drilled out onto that flat surface, you can see they turned out just as well, and they even align perfectly with that other piece we just drilled out. And if we place 1/4-inch dowels into each one of those holes and join the 2 pieces of wood together, you can see they come together perfectly and they're completely flush. But what if we want to join 2 pieces of wood not on the end of the material but in the center of the material? Well, this jig can accommodate that as well. The first thing that we want to do is to strike a reference line where we want our dowels to fall, in this case about the center of this plywood. Now we need to make an adjustment to the jig itself. We'll simply remove the 3 pins on the very top of the jig by simply unscrewing them. With those 3 knobs removed, you can see the fence of the jig easily comes off. The next thing that we want to do is to grab the vertical piece of plywood that we drilled the dowel holes out on the very end. Then we want to place a dowel into one of the center holes on that vertical piece. With our dowel in place, we want to take the vertical piece and rest it right on top of the horizontal piece that we want to join it to. Now we want to make a couple of adjustments to the jig. The first thing that we want to do is to remove the extension arm. Now let's take a look at the top of the jig where you'll find 2 pins as well as 6 holes, one for 1/4-inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. Since we're using 1/4-inch dowels, we want to take the 2 pins and slide them into the 1/4-inch slot and screw them into place. With those 1/4-inch pins locked into place, you can see we can slide the jig right up against either side of that dowel. Once you have that jig wrapped around the dowel, you want to look at the 2 side pointers and make sure that they're perfectly aligned with the line that we struck earlier. With everything aligned, we can now take a clamp and attach the jig to the plywood itself. Then we're once again ready to take our drill and drill out our first 3 holes for this joinery. Then you can go down the line by placing a dowel into the vertical piece 3 holes down and repeat the process that we just did. And once you're done with your drilling, you can fully seat that vertical piece of plywood right in the center of your material. And I'm just scratching the surface with these 2 joinery methods, as there's a lot of other things you can do with this jig, and you might want to hold on to that instructions manual, as it's got a number of different ways you can attach this jig to your wood and a bunch of different joinery methods. So if your preferred method of joinery is dowels, you may want to check out this Goingmake doweling jig. Let's move on and check out Goingmake's second new product addition to their tool lineup. This is the new Goingmake Benchtogg Drill Guide. Let's give it a look. Don't mention dogs, cuz it reminds me of my old dog 5 Miles. I named him that so I could say I walked 5 miles today. Unfortunately, I ran over 5 miles. One of my favorite benches in my shop is my MFT table, and that's because it's got all these Benchtogg holes. These are perfect to use in combination with Benchtogs to secure your wood to make your woodworking just a little bit more precise. But most benches that you buy on the market today simply don't come with those Benchtogg holes. And that's exactly what this next item from Goingmake helps alleviate. These are Benchtogg hole guides, and they actually come in 2 sizes, both a 20mm as well as a 3/4 inch. As we open the box, you can see that everything is very well packaged and protected, which is exactly what I like to see with precision tools like this. With everything out of the box, you can see that this jig appears to be fairly simple, with not a whole lot of pieces here. To understand how all these pieces work together, I want to create some Benchtogg holes on one of my existing benches. Now, if you've ever created Benchtogg holes, you'll know that it's not exactly easy. In fact, on this same bench, I tried to do it a couple of months ago, and I was completely unsuccessful. It's extremely hard to get accurate spacing, and frankly, it can be difficult to find the right Forstner bit to drill out those holes. So let's use this Goingmake jig to make this process a heck of a lot easier. To start this process off, we first want to grab the 2 extension rails and attach them to the drill guide. This is done by simply taking one of those extension rings and sliding it into the bottom of the drill guide and securing it in place with one of the included pins. Once you have one of those extension rails in place, you then want to attach the second one in a perpendicular position on the other side of the drill guide. With both extension rails in place, it's now time to install a couple of stop blocks that will reference the edge of your workbench. Before you install these, you first want to figure out where you want your first Benchtogg hole. In my case, since I'm working with a frame underneath my bench, I need to start it out at about 128mm.
For our new nation, we will have rulers with 2 sets of numbers, inches on one side, centimeters on the other.
So we can see where they line up.
Yes, except that they don't line up and they never will.
And yes, I did say millimeters, as I'm going to create Benchtogg holes 20mm wide, just because I have more Benchtoggs that are 20mm. So now it's time to attach the stops, and these are installed in the same fashion. You simply slide them onto the bottom of the extension rail and you secure them in place with one of those pins. And with both of the stops in place, you can see how it cradles your workbench for your first hole, and the drill guide feels very secure, and that's because of the rubber feet on the very bottom of the drill guide. Now it's time time to install the Forstner bit. Simply slide that Forstner bit through the bottom of the drill guide and place a brass washer right on top. Then you can take the stop collar and secure it in place at the depth you want. In my case, I'm going to place it pretty high as I want to bore out through this entire workbench. And just like that, we're ready to drill out our first hole. So we'll take the jig and place the stops right against the edge of our workbench. Then with everything secure, we can add our drill and drill out our first bench dog hole. And with our first bench dog hole drilled out, you can see how crisp and clean it is, but we need to make some more. To do this, we need to remove one of those stop blocks and grab one of the bench dogs. Back at our bench, we'll place the remaining stop block right up against the edge of our workbench, and then we can slide one of the bench dogs into the 96mm hole. Then with our drill guide secured, we can drill out our secondary hole. And then once that hole's drilled out, we can repeat the process going down the entire length of the workbench. Just continuing the process of adding more bench dogs along the way, giving you a much more secure hold. And when you're ready to make your secondary and tertiary rows, you simply use a combination of the stop and the bench dogs to secure the drill guide in place. And you can see once all those bench dog holes are drilled out, how beautiful and crisp and clean they are. Just make sure you're paying close attention as to what holes you're placing your bench dog holes into that drill guide so you don't end up with an extra space like mine. I'll have to say I'm quite pleased with the accuracy of this bench dog hole drilling guide. When I place one of my bench dogs that overlaps 2 rows, you can see it perfectly fits in place. So if you're looking for an affordable way to put bench dog holes into any workbench, you may want to check out this Goingmake bench dog hole drilling guide. Well, that covers Goingmake's 2 latest additions to their tool lineup, but we've got a few more tools to take a look at. Let's move on to our next one. Before we do that, however, I ask you to do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it truly does help out this woodworking channel. And if you haven't checked out my website, go to flynndoggwoodwork.com, where you can get access to all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. And I've just released some new models of shirts. And just like always, if any of these Goingmake tools that we take a look at today interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. And finally, if you'd like to support the channel further, check out my channel memberships where you can get early access to all my videos as well as 1 member video a week. Now let's get back to those Goingmake tools. Next up, we have a couple of 2 Goingmake rail squares. Let's give them a look. Speaking of rails, that reminds me, my mother-in-law's got a bit off the rails, but I tied the knot really well, so hopefully that train still gets her. So I've taken a look at quite a few Goingmake rail squares in the past, and I've always been really impressed with their quality. And in fact, their angle stopped rail square made my top 25 list of 2025. All of these track squares are a fraction of the price of some of your higher end rail squares, and in my opinion, they work just as well. But let's quickly check out some of the modifications they've made to 2 of their latest rail squares. Let's start off with the smaller of the 2. As we open the box, you can see we're once again dealing with some quality packaging. So right off the bat, when I take a look at this square, it reminds me a lot of their TS2, which is their mini square. Now, although the sizes appear to be the same, there are some subtle differences. Let's talk about those. Some of the differences of this track square have to do with its compatibility. Not only is this track square compatible with Festool, but also Makita and Craig. And although not advertised, this track square is also compatible with WED, if you're nasty. I believe part of the flexibility of this track square has to do with the T-bar that slides right into the bottom of the track. Unlike the TS2, which has a stationary bar, this one's got one that's completely adjustable. If we flip the square around, you can see there's a bronze knob that you can loosen and tighten. Depending on where the slot is in your track, you can adjust this bar, and once you slide it in, you can tighten it into place. The other significant thing that I noticed is the latch that connects to the lip of your track. Unlike the TS2, which is a simple tension latch, this new latch allows you to twist it into place to get the tension you want. But most of all, I'm really excited that this new track square is both compatible with Makita and Craig, as these are 2 track saws that I'm really interested in checking out. But what about that other rail square? What's different about it? Well, let's check it out. This is the Goingmake long track square, and you can see there's a lot of similarities between the one we just took a look at. The biggest difference is the size. Unlike the one we just took a look at that's just a little over 10 inches, this one's a full foot long. But otherwise, they appear to be built almost identically. If we look at the latch, you can see it's got that same tensioning system with a spring-loaded latch. Not only that, but it's also got that same adjustable bar that slides right into your track. track, and it's tightened down once again with that bronze knob. And as you may have already guessed, all of these features are going to make this rail square once again compatible with all these brands. It will just have about 1 3/4 of an inch more of an extension from the track than the smaller square that we just took a look at. So depending on your stability needs and the brand of track you're working with, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these revamped Goingmake rail squares. Now, if you thought those improvements were pretty amazing, you're not going to want to miss out on this last item. This is the new and improved Goingmake shelf pin jig. Let's give it a look. Pins, huh? That reminds me of my old buddy Mitch. He bought a world map so that he could place pins on everywhere that he traveled. Unfortunately, he had to travel to the top 2 corners of that map first so that it wouldn't fall down. So when I initially got this jig, I thought it was just a couple of improvements, but they've completely revamped it. Now, if we open up this box, this is no ordinary shelf pin jig, and you'll begin to see what I'm talking about in just a moment. First off, this is both a 1/4 inch as well as 5mm shelf pin jig, so depending on what pins you're using, you can use this tool. Let's dive into what makes this shelf pin jig unique by drilling out some shelf pin holes. For today's video, I'm going to install some 5mm shelf pin holes. One of the first things that we want to do is to install the stop collar. To do this, we'll slide our drill bit through one of the drill guides, set our depth, and place the collar and tighten it down. Once we have our bit set up, we'll take the shelf pin jig and use the lip that's right on the end and place it right up against the edge of our material. If we look closer at the shelf pin jig, you can see there's 3 different offsets that you can have with the drill guide. These include 1 7/16 of an inch, 2 inches, as well as 2.5 inches. To adjust the offset, you simply unscrew the drill guide pin and place it into the offset that you're looking for. In my case, I'm going to stick with the 2.5 inch offset. The next thing that you want to do is to take your marking for the start point of these shelf pin holes and line it up with the markings on the very front of the jig. Then it's just a matter of placing a clamp onto the jig and drilling out your 6 holes for those shelf pins. With all of those holes drilled out, we can remove the jig and grab our spacing pin. All that we have to do is to move the jig down the line and place that spacing pin into the last hole that we drilled out. Then with a quick clamp to our jig, we can continue on with 5 more holes. And you can continue this process for as long as you need, but what if you need to do some shelf pin holes on the interior of a cabinet? If we take a closer look at the jig again, you'll notice that there's 2 knobs that actually hold that lip to the jig. By simply unscrewing both of those knobs, that lip is easily removed. Then you can slide this jig anywhere on your cabinet wall. All you need to do is to once again line up your marking for your first hole with the front of the jig. Then you can use the secondary pointers that are in between the drill guides to make sure that you're aligning your holes in the place that you want them. Once everything's aligned, you can add a clamp and drill out the rest of your holes. And once this jig is attached to your material, it really does stay in place, and that's because of 3 inset rubber pads that are located on the very bottom of the jig. But we haven't even touched upon the greatest feature of this shelf pin jig. To understand that, we need to grab another one. Believe it or not, this shelf pin jig is completely expandable. Let's take a look at how that works. If we look at either one of these jigs, you'll notice that there's 2 extra pins on either side of the jig. You'll also notice that one side of the jig has an inlay and the other a tab, and these slide perfectly together. Once they're overlapping like this, you can take 2 of the extra pins and screw them both together. This instantly creates a shelf pin jig not with 6 drill guides, but a total of 12. And I suppose the more of these you have, the more you can add together, creating that much more efficiency. Well, I don't know about you, but this expandability makes this one of the most unique shelf pin jigs available on the market today. Well, I don't know about you, but I had a whole lot of fun checking out all the new features of these new Goingmake tools. If you haven't already, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video. It truly does help. And once again, if you haven't already, check out my website, FlynnDoggWoodwork.com, where you can get access to all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. And once again, I just released some new models. And if any of these Goingmake tools that we took a look at today interest you, I'll leave links in the description below so that you can go check them out for yourself. And lastly, if you'd like to support the channel even further, check out my channel memberships where you can get early access to all my videos as well as 1 member video a week. Until next time, take care as always. All right, let's get it. So did you hear the guitar maker Fender just announced they're going to release a new line of electric saxophones? They may want to work on the name though. They plan on calling it Saxo Fender. Come on. How about this one? Did you hear the makers of Summer's Eve just released a new product line for men? It's a spray called Umpire. Yep, it's for foul balls. All right. right, last try. You know dogs are the best. I've got a lab. It's a meth lab and I guard it with pit bulls.